David Brinkley's Journal is brought to you by the Pittsburgh Plate Glass Company, PPG. Quality products in paint, glass, chemicals, and fiberglass.
Good evening. Perhaps, as sheer guess, 1 out of 5 Americans is or is descended from an immigrant who came into this country through Ellis Island. For 62 years, that was our big immigration station, the way to the New World. 20 million people came through it, mainly from Europe, to help build this country and in turn to be built by it. Well, now it is closed. In a country more devoted than we are to tradition and sentiment, it would by now be some kind of monument or shrine. But in fact, it is merely a piece of government surplus property, like a worn-out Jeep, and it's up for sale for anyone who can find anything decent to do with it. It stands there now in New York Harbor, peeling and decaying while people argue about its future. In a moment, we will look at Ellis Island and listen to the argument. Here now is a message from... Until 1917, practically any foreigner who could buy a steamship ticket could move into the United States, and a steerage ticket then was $10. About the only other requirements, not always enforced, were that he be able to see and walk around. But in 1917, the doorway began to close. That year, we applied a literacy test, and in 1921, for the first time, we set quotas so many could come in from each country. Well, basically, that is still the system we have, but now the quotas are small, the requirements are rigid, the immigrants are few, we don't need an Ellis Island anymore, so in 1954, it was closed down. It lies about a mile off the tip of Manhattan Island, about a fifth of a mile from New Jersey. Originally it had 3 acres, but it has been filled and expanded mostly with earth and rock brought in foreign ships as ballast and dumped here. So its 27 acres now are made up of contributions from all over the world. In the old days of mass immigration, when a ship docked in New York, the first and second class passengers were processed right on the ship. But those in steerage were herded into a ferry boat hauled across the harbor to Ellis Island to be examined briefly and asked a few questions, 38 to be exact, name, age, birthplace, parents, and the others. And that was how 20 million people entered the New World. Those who were for some reason held in doubt and in need of a little investigating stayed on the island anywhere from a day to a month while the Immigration Service checked on them. There were 3 beds and meals, an exercise yard, benches where they could sit around and look across the water at New York and wonder if they would ever get there. The old ferry boat is still there, tied up, and whoever buys the island will get that too. The federal government, declaring the island surplus property, has offered it for sale and invited bids from buyers. There have been many, but so far none has been accepted either because the bids were too low or because the government didn't like what the buyer proposed to do with it. Among the properties the new owner will get is this building with an interdenominational chapel on the 2nd floor and a mural showing people of various nationalities building a railroad across a continent. And that, incidentally, is one reason why immigration was so free for so long. Expanding American industry needed and got cheap labor. In 1905, a photographer named Louis Hine took this and other striking pictures of a new American streaming in through Ellis Island, showing the kinds of faces that, minus the beards and the shabby clothes, can be seen all over the United States today. the central hall where new arrivals sat and waited to be checked. The medical exam consisted of walking slowly past two doctors. If they could walk and there were no obvious external symptoms, they passed. For those waiting, there was little to do. For those who could read, there was a library, and now the books are gone, but the card file catalog is still there. When the U.S. Immigration Service moved out, most of the furniture, such as it was, just stayed there. This one has a visitor's logbook dated 1920. And that was the central control desk where the immigrants were given their tags and put in line to answer questions and to have the doctors glance at them. Well, this and all the island now is dilapidated and deserted, though it does look as if at one time it was lived in, as indeed it was. Now, across the harbor in New York City, there are numerous people with ideas good and bad on what to do with Ellis Island. This winter, to get all the ideas on the record, a subcommittee of the United States Senate held a hearing in New York to listen to them. Senator Edwin Muskie of Maine was chairman. Senators Javits and Keating of New York sat in. As the hearing started, the first dispute was about whether the island, when the federal government lets it go, will belong to New York or New Jersey. That's the chairman, Senator Muskie, whose father came from Poland. The committee staff members and Senators Keating and Javits, whose father came through the island from Russia. Keating's father came a little earlier from Northern Ireland.
That is that I don't want to inject a controversial note in the early stages of this hearing, but one of the problems will be the determination of whether Ellis Island actually lies within the confines of New York or New Jersey.
Senator Keating. I do suggest not even an act of Congress, frankly, can float Ellis Island any closer to the borough of Manhattan. It just can't be done.
So that one thought occurred to me that the Attorney General of New Jersey and the Attorney General of New York might meet on this island and each one sock the other in the nose, and then the Attorney General of New York could indict the Attorney General of New Jersey in New York, and the Attorney General of New Jersey indict the Attorney General of New York in New Jersey, and one place or the other, they'd be acquitted on the ground of no jurisdiction. They might both be acquitted, and then you wouldn't have any resolution of it at all. But
They might both be convicted.
I agree with you. Yeah, that's right. Then you'd be the same thing.
I'm sure the friends in Jersey are very reasonable. I have an
Mayor Wagner.
because my mother was born in Jersey City, and I think the question of the jurisdiction could be ironed out by a meeting of the minds if there would be an agreement on the purpose.
I would suggest the placement on the eastern shore of the island of a big statue of Moses, which in my opinion could be a replica of the statue of the Renaissance
Jewish leader.
by the great sculptor Michelangelo.
We have proposed the establishment of a great international
Pearl Buck.
diagnostic center on Ellis Island for the purpose of diagnosis, research, and the training of teachers and workers in the field of the mentally retarded. We've been working for more than 3 years on the thesis that Ellis Island is the ideal place in which to bring these much-needed purposes into practical actuality.
Our proposal is known as the Key Project for Ellis Island. It was commissioned by the Corporation and was designed expressly for Ellis Island by the late Frank Lloyd Wright. For want of other description, it has been referred to as the city of the future. What will it be like to live on the Key or to visit? A fleet, not one, but a fleet of small, high-speed ferry boats will enter a sheltered slip in the center of the island, from which passengers disembark and take moving sidewalks, escalators, or elevators to the tall glass apartment towers or onto vast circular terraces. From the reinforced concrete pylons that rise as the central support of the apartment towers, decorative steel cables suspend the large circular terrace with its periphery of domes. In these domes are the theaters, exhibition halls, concert halls, galleries, and the further needs of the city. Gardens and pools, flowers and fountains grace the entire project to make this jewel-like city, hovering over and surrounded by water, a beautiful, sunny, and exhilarating area in which to live or visit. We have offered the highest price for the island itself, more than $2 million. We seek to build a city unlike and more fantastic than any other on the face of this earth.
Our plan calls for a liberal arts college of 1,000 students,
Lewis Webster Jones.
educational and largely residential. The architect's rendering here shows how the existing buildings will be utilized. We expect to preserve and to adapt all the important present facilities at Ellis Island to the purposes of the new college. Our architects and engineers have found the existing structures basically sound, easily adaptable, and relatively inexpensive to convert.
I think it's important to realize that no one is going to Ellis Island and is going to use the buildings that are there.
Edward Corsi, former Immigration Commissioner.
It has to be rebuilt. I'm for the university ideas, and I think New York is an ideal center for international universities. I question whether Ellis Island is, for many reasons. First of all, it's not easy to get to Ellis Island. The cost of transportation is enormous. Our biggest problem is the ferry service. I think we spend $1 million a year on getting this old ferry over there every 15 minutes. One of the great difficulties I had with the immigration service the time I was in charge of it, the people of Ellis Island, was to get them rid of their insular psychology. It's an amazing thing how you can be right at the foot of New York and see the skyline, and yet over the years you'll develop a mentality which practically separates you from the mainland. Now I think that Congress ought to declare it a national monument, turn it over to the Park Service, and then either by appointment of the President or by appointment of Congress and the President jointly have a national committee, not too large a committee of distinguished citizens who would devote themselves for a year or so to an honest, thoroughgoing study of what to do with this island as a national monument, carrying out the idea of the perpetuation of thought that America is a nation of immigrants.
I should like to see a liberal college of the finest quality on Ellis Island.
Mark Van Dorn.
It is, for one thing, an attractive idea that immediately recommends itself. I have never talked with anyone who failed to feel this attraction.
The fact of putting a college in that particular space is, to me,
Real estate developer.
well, I just can't fathom. I don't understand why a college has to be placed only on Ellis Island. The attraction to Ellis Island, as I see it, is that these people want something for nothing, though they say that it's for the public's good, with the exception of the Frank Lloyd Wright people. Nobody has come up here and said, we will pay for this island with our funds. We will create the development on this island with our funds. We are not going to the government We are not going to the state. We are not going to the municipality. And this is the thing, gentlemen, that I think we should come back to the basic realities that we cannot feed off the government, the state, and the city. And the plan that we offer, and we have offered since 1957, was a plan that we would do this without any assistance from your government, without any assistance from your state, without any assistance from your municipality. We ask for no tax abatement. We don't ask for federal assistance in the building and completion of our buildings.
Ellis Island is no ordinary piece of real estate. It ought not to be treated as such.
Congressman Emanuel Seller.
Services Administration speaks of $6 million worth of buildings on the island. Well, frankly, anyone who puts a price tag on Ellis Island, to my mind, is very much like the cynic. They know the price of everything but the value of nothing.
This is a very troublesome problem when we've had so many, as you recognize, so many meritorious projects presented. It's occurred to me that about the only way to please all of them would be to have a university for the older mentally retarded.
Senator Keith.
And that's highly practical.
A statue of Moses, a modern city, a center for retarded children, a small college, an apartment development, a monument. Those are a few of the suggestions. Another, from the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce, was to build an enormous electric sign reading 3,159 miles to Los Angeles. Well, the island is still there, empty. Its buildings peeling, and nobody knows what will be done with it. But we do know some of the things done by people who passed through it. And in a moment, we will look at one of the most remarkable one-man achievements ever seen anywhere.